Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of the South Star Classroom. I am super happy to be here. I am Charles Cole, followed along with my good friends Omar and David. How you fellas doing today? David, you've had double duty today, so tell us how you are, and then we will reflect on what you had going on this morning.
Yeah, doing good. Like Charles said. Actually, first off, good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for joining us on the South Star Classroom. Let's see what is going on in general. Not much. Still the end of the school year is approaching, and many of my clients, school-based clients, are really kind of just buckling down and looking at that end of May or beginning June date and helping folks plan through that, and also planning for pretty robust summer programs as well as planning for the upcoming school year. So there's always a lot going in the world of people that actually run schools. It's been a busy time, and I appreciate all the school leaders out there that are doing the work, yourself included, Omar. This morning, I've had the honor and privilege of joining the Freedom Friday morning podcast with Chris Stewart and Sharif El-Mekki. So thank you for making that connection, Charles. I really appreciate it.
Mm-hmm.
We spent an hour talking about some of the work that Sharif is doing, and also looking at potential pathways to replicate or duplicate that work, the work of identifying Black teachers in the work that Sharif is doing, but also at the same time seeing where there are opportunities. There are obviously opportunities because the percentages are off when you look at kids in school and who teaches them. But had a good discussion around possibly partnering and thinking about how we can get more Brown teachers into classrooms that serve Brown children as well. It was a great way to start my day off at 7 a.m. West Coast time.
I mean, yeah, I was gonna say Omar. I thought about Omar too, but I know O has he has to be in the building and in his place. But we're gonna get him on one of these extra shows as well. We'll bring him on A Black Hand soon. Omar, how you feeling, man? What's new with you, brother?
Let me ask, is the microphone staticky or is it okay?
You're good right now. We'll let you know though, because we can't not let you know with the way it was static and behind the scenes. So we got you.
Okay, fair enough, man. Fair enough. I'm glad we got this resolved. Good, man. It's crazy. It is May, which means state testing is coming around. I'm sure if you're in the education world, you know all about that. If you're a parent, you know all about that because kids are nervous about the state testing. And what we're doing is finishing out our rounds of state testing and then looking at our 2-week summer bridge program, where we're doing really detailed work, providing, detailed programming. So for our emerging bilingual kids, we're doing a lot of language acquisition and literacy in the mornings, and that's it. And then doing really fun activities in the afternoon. For our students that have major gaps, we're doing major gap analysis and getting them caught up as much as we can in those 2 weeks in the morning, English and math, and then fun activities in the afternoon. And then for our 8th graders and 9th graders, we're getting them prepared for something called the TSI exam, the Texas Success Initiative. And what it is essentially AccuPlacer. And for those in the know, that is the exam that you take in order to qualify for community college, so that our high school kids can be taking college courses for free while they're with us. So it's an exciting time, just crazy busy, man. So busy. My hair is flaring out left and right. So busy. Dr. Charles Cole is so exhausted. The man needs to go see a movie. Ladies and gentlemen, this doctor is so tired that he has to go see a movie to refresh himself. That is how hard the South Star Classroom is working for you. Yeah. David woke up and did a podcast earlier that the farmer wakes up to wake up the roosters.
That's right. That's right.
Crazy day.
You ain't never lied, man. I am pretty exhausted. I will be, I got some stuff to do after this, but I'm going to see Doctor Strange. You lucky I don't have a cocktail in front of me now to pregame to go see. I am going to be a child at this Marvel movie afterwards. I am exhausted, but I'm very, very happy to be able to report we had an amazing guest last week, Miss Toya, and she had some questions, and we made a promise to you all that, hey, not only will we have this show, but we also want to be a resource for people. So, in that resource, folks, you can go and hit the link in the comments. And this is what we had. She asked us a bunch of questions, and so we put together all of her questions. And in that, we answered them. And so this is a resource for you all that you all have access to. Pull it down. You can make comments or ask us any questions that you got. And we will officially publish this on medium.com at some point, but we want to give you all early access and keep our promise that we would build out resources for you. And as you can see, it is not just some, lowly one pager. It is us going in and making sure that Miss Toya got all of her answers, her questions answered, that this community has something that they could take that's tangible. And if you have more questions, send it to us, because that's our job. Our job, is not just to be a source of entertainment. We want to be a resource for you. We want to make sure that you feel empowered, that you have agency, that you have the tools and the language you need to get what you need for to get what your kids need, right? So thank you, fellas, for getting that in and populating that. And Omar just has a ton of stuff that we need to start sharing with you all, that he's just been writing like a madman, and I've missed it somehow. So we will start getting all of that stuff out to you all. So, with that being said, go ahead.
I want to tag on to some of Omar's comments. You said, making sure that we're able to get, people what they need, so people can get, the children what they need. And we're obviously in this moment of heading into summer, and I think for school leaders and systems leaders that are planning, summer programs, one of the schools in Oakland that I'm working for, one of the networks, was surprised by the number of ninth graders that had quote unquote qualified into a summer program because of multiple non-passing grades, right? And I said you got to reflect on this now. These kids basically didn't have middle school; they had it online. And now they're in a brick and mortar building. And I'm like, you have to take all these factors into consideration. And yes, it's good that you know who these children are. Let's get them into summer programs. Focused on sometimes the fundamentals that Omar shared. I think that's really important. And what Omar also shared, which, not seeing a lot of, but I wish more people would really take the time to plan and invest in this, is making sure that, summer learning comes with extracurriculars as well. It shouldn't just be a math and a ELA boot camp. Do that in the morning when the minds are fresh, feed the children, and then, let them bring experiences into the school that maybe other kids get when they actually go to, summer camp. So bring in, third-party providers to come and do activities with the children, take them out into the community, get them out, for study tours or other types of activities. So these children can have a balanced summer activity. So I wanted to make sure I put that out there for everybody that's planning right now their summer programs for this summer.
Hey man, that's awesome, man. See, just a resource, man. And I hope that everybody kind of listening is understanding, what we're trying to do here. And I hope that, I think that there's a lot of people getting a lot of clout online by being just overly political or leaning super hard left, right, or whatever the case is. And they're not centering the needs of young people and the needs of making sure that kids are achieving and getting what they need and what they deserve. And so what we're trying to do, is make sure that that's happening and that you got those resources. And I think that the way that Omar and you just laid that out was pretty eloquent. And I think it was grounded in a way that connects the parent level, the street level to that of the practice. And as we speak about practice, there's been a lot of things happening in the news. And Omar, I know this is sounding somewhat Oakland centric, but I do think that there are implications and there are lessons to be taken across the country. And so in Oakland, where David and I kind of have cut our teeth on education, there was this. We have a board, and it's a very contentious school board of education. Oakland is just crazy. It's just a crazy, weird place, and politics are just out of control. And there was this board member that I know, and I have a lot of respect for. We didn't agree on a lot, but we always had a lot of mutual respect for each other. And I believe her in that she believes in what she believes, right? And I think she believes me in what I believe around choice, and I believe what she believes around unions. And she was one of the biggest union supporters and one of the best organizers that the school board has ever seen, as far as organizing grassroots, getting parents out, getting parents, involved. And to be fair and to be frank, she was very, very pro-union. And the union has been so toxic in Oakland, like not on just protecting, education or students or whatever. It has just become so political. It has become such a fight. And this is a person with integrity that saw the writing on the wall, that saw the facts and made some decisions. And this union fought her tooth and nail. Here's a video. I want to just share her reflection as one of the strongest pro-union board members and best organized board members decided to resign, and here's why.
Board shakeup tonight in the Bay Area at a district already in turmoil, already facing declining enrollment, school closures, and teacher strikes. An Oakland Unified board member now says she's stepping down. ABC 7 News senior education reporter Leanne Melendez sat down with Shanti Gonzalez to talk about why it's so hard to be a board member in Oakland, Leanne.
Yeah, that's what I hear. School board member Shanti Gonzalez told me she had two goals when she started this job: to invest in teachers by giving them more training and development, and number two, to organize parents to become more involved in the education of their children. Instead, she says, she found a school board that spends too much time distracted on issues that have little to do with how students in Oakland are doing academically.
And we all want to live in a community where people are treated with dignity and respect.
After more than 7 years as an Oakland Unified School Board member, Shanti Gonzalez is candid about her abrupt departure.
Your main concern is that most schools are not meeting students' academic needs.
Yeah. What's problematic about that is that A, students aren't getting their needs met. Most students are not getting their needs met. B, that's been hurting our enrollment for 20 years now.
Here's the data from Oakland Unified. Over 47% of high schoolers are 1 or more years below grade level in reading. 44% are behind in math. 53% of elementary school students are not reading at grade level, with nearly 60% of students below grade level in math. Gonzalez insists that the board is forced to spend too much time on other issues that have nothing to do with a student's academic needs. This is not the first board member to complain. Jody London served for 12 years.
When the school district gets caught up in crazy protests and teacher strikes, it sends parents away. And if we're really concerned about ensuring that we have a good education system for students in Oakland for a long time to come, we need to really buckle down and figure out how we're going to educate kids.
In her departure letter to the community, Gonzalez also talked about the challenges of working with the teachers union.
It's not the teachers who have a problem with, but it's with the union.
One of the challenges that I see is that our union has consistently resisted any efforts to incentivize or attract teachers in hard to fill subjects, chemistry, physics, math, languages, and particularly special education.
Why is that?
They just don't believe in differentiating salaries. They believe that, everybody is a teacher, everybody should be paid the same.
So we reached out to the Oakland Education Association, and here's what they told us. Director Gonzalez will not be missed. We hope the next director will listen to and keep their commitments to District 6 students and families rather than closing their schools. And what some school board members told me is that we've lost that ability to agree to disagree. Now, they claim that if you disagree, you are often told you are wrong, end of discussion, and or labeled a racist. And Gonzalez says it's hard to make any progress for students under those specific conditions. In the newsroom, Leanne Melendez, ABC 7 News.
Very complicated, obviously. And thank you so much.
So, fellas,
Wow.
so again, that's the full video. David, this was your first time seeing said video. Again, I would just say Shanti Gonzalez again, we've had many a debate, but I do. She always was respectful and she argued her points. And I don't, for you all that's not from Oakland and hearing this, you have to understand the level and the magnitude it is of her calling out the union, right? Like this is like Michael Jordan almost saying I rebuked the Chicago Bulls during the 90s, man. It is like she believes in unions and labor, and it has gotten so toxic that she's just like, you know what, I gotta deuce out. Like she didn't even wait till like her election. She was like, I'm done. I'm gone. So David, we'll bring you in, Omar. But I know, David, you introduced this topic last week. You introduced this topic for us on A Black Hands. What is your reaction to said video?
Yeah, I mean, I think first, again, I mean, I've known Shanti for a long time, you know, campaigned for her and against her, and she's a formidable organizer. She's good at winning elections. So I commend her for that. Absolutely disagreed with her on her view around public charter schools and their role in the education landscape in Oakland, and that's okay. We always disagreed since day one, but we never stopped talking, and we never name called. She always picked up the phone. You know, she would call me if she had a challenge or wanted to you know, a thought partner for something that she was, you know, thinking about. And you know, I commend her for that. I think what's happened is really sad, not just for the board, but for the children in Oakland Unified School District and for the city as a whole. This is not a knock at the teachers that work in Oakland classrooms every day, but this is laser focused at the leadership of a teacher union that has gone so extreme. It is now reminiscent of like who gets the invite to Mar-a-Lago, who hasn't pissed off Trump? Because if you haven't pissed off Trump, you get the invite, right? It's exactly this kind of like really extreme politics of we elected you, and if for whatever reason what we're asking you to do you don't do, maybe you can't even do it. You know, they're just going to come after you and they're going to make your life hell. I think another interesting fact here is that in her district in Oakland, there are 7 board districts and 7 city council districts. In District 6, 40% plus or minus of the children in that district attend charter schools. So really, when you think about like who they represent, and these are people that are elected with a vote of around 6,000 to 8,000 people in a district of, you know, hundreds of thousands of people, they're really elected by a very small minority of the population. So none of them have a true mandate, as they like to claim. But you know, I disagreed with many of her points, but we remained cordial and we had open communication. And I'll leave it at that. I think it's a sad day for Oakland. I mean, I talked about this 10 years ago when I worked for the Charter Association. I said Oakland has some good schools, but if they don't focus on academics, families are going to leave. And now here we are.
Man, I appreciate that, man. And oh, you know, I know you're from Texas. I know like the politics might be a little bit different, but their own level of crazy in Tejas. Just with the contest clues and what we talked about last week and what you just saw, you know, what's your general reaction?
I mean, I think it's like, didn't Digital Underground sing a song called The Same Old Song? All day long, the same song.
All around the world, brother. All around the world, same song,
all
brother.
around the world. That's what I like to hear, man. See, this man knows his Shakji.
Oakland's finest.
Money B. I love those guys. It's the same old song. And what I'm realizing is that there's like 3 major common themes that I think we need to be exceptionally worried about. That's not just something that's occurring in Oakland or in Texas, but is becoming a trend that I'm seeing nationally that I'm absolutely worried about. The first is that first you have a teachers union that instead of working with the district and working collaboratively with the district and figuring out a way of making education the major theme or even teachers' rights, the major theme, what they're essentially doing is just selfishly grappling for power, authority, and attention. And if people are like, well, we need the teacher unions to do these things, I'm like, well, listen, like I am a superintendent and I'm actually looking at pay scales myself for teachers. And as you know, as a charter school, like, look, we have the luxury of hiring teachers that aren't fully accredited yet, and then they have a year to gain their accreditation. And the accreditation is one thing. If you're a special education teacher, not only do you have to have that teacher accreditation, you have to have higher levels of accreditation because federal standards for special education are very rigorous. It's heavily regulated. It requires an additional level of expertise. So for teacher unions to say, we're not going to honor the extra level of work that you've done to get these certifications, we're just going to pay everybody the same, is, I think, just an abysmal look at business to say everyone's equal. And I'm like, look, dude, I'm sorry, man. Like, we ain't all equal. If one of my teachers has a master's degree, I'm going to pay them more. If one of my teacher has ESL certification, I'm going to pay them more. Because listen, like as much as I love reading the Communist Manifesto and understand estranged labor, which by the way, most people that scream Marxism have never read it. So take a read. Like that's some seriously like weird ass, like that ain't capitalist, man. This is a market society. And when you have those levels of certification and they're more difficult to garner, you have to level out the market in order to provide some level of reassurance to that person that like, yeah, man, thank you for the effort. We're going to pay you more because it's going to be harder to get you. So that's just, it's like tone deaf and blind. And I see that happening in unions across the country. But the other two major themes that I see occurring with this discussion is we're getting lost in what's important. So it becomes this battle for like political nuance and power for like ego and our power and what we're doing instead of being like, yo, what are we supposed to be doing here? Educating kids. And look, I know the unions are all for protecting teachers, but is this really protecting teachers or is this just a mainstay of a power grab? And what they're doing is they're fighting over what is seemingly to me highly inconsequential things that shouldn't even be negotiated or like dealt with. It's like, this makes sense. They have higher levels of certification. Let's pay them more and let the school district do what they need to do to acquire the talent without the union interfering when they should be helping. But they're making a big deal out of something that's not a big deal. When the big deals are, where are our kids reading? What are our kids' math levels? Are our kids getting the support and social emotional support that they need in the schools? And like unions busting in like the Kool-Aid man and being like, oh yeah, we're still here. I'm like, look, man, no one called you and no one needed you. So what are you doing? It's a distraction. And that distraction is distracting us away from very critical issues like literacy skills, graduation skills, like in California, making sure that those kids are eligible, not just for the state programs, but the state universities. And last but not least, very quickly, like the third major issue that I see as a result is this insane level of like insecurity and like childish sophomoric behavior that when you're having a discussion about something business-wise, you immediately go to like, oh, that's racist. Oh, that's sexist. Oh, that's just misogyny. Oh, that's just the man. And I'm like, no, that's business.
Right.
Yep.
And you playing that card when that card, like that's a heavy card to play. And you play that card when you've got inscrutable proof that this is what that's about. So if this is about racism, misogyny, all those things, cool, let's dissect that and get to the proof. But someone trying to tell me, hey, man, we should pay our special education teachers more. You just racist. What?
Yeah.
Like, okay,
I mean, and that's the
that
thing.
card out.
But that's the thing, right? Like these words matter. Like these words have meaning, right? And if you just bastardize them, if you just overuse them and you just chicken little the entire thing, right? Like they're going to continue to lose their value. And then those far right people are going to get more leeway and more push through. I mean, here's the thing, man. We're about to enter the midterm elections, right? And I'm not even really like the political one, but I would bet a lot of money that it's going to be a Democratic bloodbath. And it is stuff like this, right? It is the overuse, and especially when somebody like Miss Gonzalez, who fully understands what racism is, trust me, who fully has experienced it, who fully has experienced misogyny, who fully knows these terms in depth. And when that's the person that you're trying to put this on, like if that's the catch-all, like you are weakening very valiant fights where there is real racism, where there is real sexism, where there is real misogyny, where there are real ills in the world. And guess what? On top of all of that, our kids are no better off for it. They are no better off for it. And I think this was just such an important topic because, again, this is not just your run-of-the-mill board member. This is not just your moderate board member. This is somebody whose life has been dedicated to labor. We went to the same university. When I was starting at Cal State Hayward, I was on that track, that Unionista track. If they would have, I was very close. If they would have offered me an opportunity to go to, Central America to do like union organizing around, coffee or whatever, I would have gone, right? That's the type of program that we came from. So I know where her heart is. And I can only imagine how difficult it was for her to have to denounce them. Like that's a tough pill to swallow.
Absolutely. And we don't, on this show, we don't talk in binary things, right? We're talking about we're talking about the leadership of a particular teachers union. We're not talking about all teacher unions. We're not talking about all unions. Like we can have a nuanced conversation and call out what needs to be called out. I think, and you're right, Charles, like what she said in the interview and what she wrote in her kind of farewell letter was it was a very difficult thing to write. And I think, when we step back and look at what really are actions that support anti-Blackness and actions that support anti-brownness and actions that are racist, these are actions that this particular union is holding up by refusing to even talk about academic outcomes for children. They're just not interested. And that is anti-Black, that is anti-brown, that is anti-child. And so the OUSD has a tough road ahead, especially in the time of declining enrollment when its own teachers union, could you imagine if the superintendent was a white man? The superintendent is a Black woman who was born and raised in Oakland and went through Oakland schools, right? And they're still fighting like hell against her and her leadership, crippling their ability to actually manage and govern this large school district. I want to say one more thing before we move on, because I want to make sure our listeners hear this. Charles, you put it out there, kind of like sophomoric behavior. Some of the things that have happened in Oakland are really troubling. And, like if you're talking about the longshoremen's union or the carpenters union or the pipe fitters union, they want to do some crazy stuff. They don't work with my kid, right? The teachers union actually works with children every day, right? And in the last year, what Shanti Gonzalez has laid out in her farewell letter, and I'm going to speak in her words, I'm not going to make anything up. Some of the actions and activities for an organization that claims to represent children and families are 100% shameful. So I'm just going to read a quick paragraph from her farewell letter. In the time that I've served on the board, I've noticed two tactics that OEA and its allies have consistently used to try and shut down debate of topics that they don't agree with. So you don't agree with me, we're going to come after you. There's 2 points there. One of them basically says, they immediately pull out the race card. The second says attempting to silence board members and other community members through acts of intimidation. In my case, contacting my employer to ask I be condemned for supporting school closures. So they called her employer. In the case of others, vandalizing their homes, accosting them outside of their homes at midnight, cutting their internet cables during board meetings when they're doing board meetings from home, right? Denouncing them during their church services as a Black Judas. So they showed up, I believe, to Dr. Clifford Thompson's church and went off on him. They cut off the board member Sam Davis's internet during a board meeting, at his home, and flyering in their neighborhoods, calling them racist and lots more. So these are the people that are charged with supporting teachers that teach 35,000 children in Oakland. Yes, Nicole, criminal activity. I just want to put it out there. I want to call it what it is. We can move on now, but people.
Oh, no. Let's not move on. Let's not move on. Because I think sometimes people will watch this show.
Wild.
They'll watch this show or they'll watch me on A Black Hands. And I think sometimes they'll be like, why is he so turned? Like, why is he like so? I worked in Antoine Wilson's office. I worked to actually try to make things better at the schools that I went to, that I did not want to see closed. And the thing is we are at this school closure phase, but 7 years ago, 6 years ago, 5 years ago, 4 years ago, I was out there. Jamoke was out there. People were out there. Advocates were out there and saying, listen, these schools need your help now. Enrollment is declining now. Like, we need to make sure that we have something here that's viable for students. And I watch these people. Listen, I went to Lafayette Elementary School. It's a famed school in the sense that Huey P. Newton went there as well. And it was one of these schools on this red list. And it was so poorly serving young people. And I know people getting their feelings about it and stuff like that, but they were poorly serving young people when I was a student there. And the enrollment was just declining in such a way. And we told these people the truth. Jamoke, who's been on this show, who is also a board member, who also was tempted to leave in the middle of her term, but stayed. There were many nights that woman was crying, trying to get a breakthrough. And our superintendent would say, let's be innovative. Let's actually attract the best educators. So the best teachers in the district, we are wanting you to come here. We will pay you more and we'll offer bonuses for gains. We also, with the community, might I add, said, hey, we need additional hours. So let's do what they do in Chinatown. Let's do how the Chinese do with China schools or whatever, right? Where it's like, you either got to go to Chinese school after school every day or you go on Saturday. We wanted extended days. The community wanted it. We had teachers that wanted it. And it didn't even get out of his office before the union shut it down. And people wonder why, when I'm talking about this union, it's not all, it's this one. It's this one. Mm-hmm. They are toxic and they are crazy. And here's the thing. There are good people. There are good educators, because we want to unions, because we want to labor, right? That we will hitch our horse to that wagon, and you don't know the full extent of that crazy. You harassing somebody at 12 after midnight. When Dr. Wilson, when Antoine Wilson was our superintendent, his kids were in Oakland schools and teachers had accosted his children about a contract. Are you fucking kidding me? Are you serious? Do you not have, so I know that I can be a little bit I can go there, man, but I was ready and still am ready for the record. I'm ready for whatever with some of these people, man, because that level, we're not talking about debate. We're talking about criminal harassment and no help for kids. But by all means, take a Friday off. Take a Friday off in an illegal strike where kids are not getting what they need after missing damn near 2 years of education in a district where less than 50% of kids can read on grade level. The fuck is you talking about? Excuse me.
Woo. Okay, Omar, you're up next, man. We just kind of, and I know it probably, you're in El Paso and we're talking about Oakland, but man, Oakland is, there's a lot going on there, and there's, I think, a lot we can learn from and a lot that we shouldn't learn from. So, hearing all of that, what are your reflections on the situation, and what do adults need to be doing differently?
Look, I think that California is a very unionized state. So I think about like, you know, the UTLA, right? The United Teachers of Los Angeles and the union down there. I'm looking at Oakland. And I understand that you all are making a very singular case to the Oakland union that is saying like these have demonstrated examples of like criminal behavior, you know, immoral, unethical work, and really just a kind of like, again, like tone deaf about what the needs are. My question is, a lot of people say as California goes, the country goes, as like New York goes, the country goes. And, you know,
we're in big trouble.
But like, honestly, like who's really nailing this one in the unions? So like, if you look at what's going on in Texas, it is a right to work state. However, the federations still wield an incredible amount of power politically and an incredible amount of power in their work with teachers, because they're sharing, in my opinion, very false narratives. And those false narratives are predicated upon really just like false stories of the services that they're providing and a false narrative about what they are for. Now, I want to do a bit of a step back, and I want to ask our audience, and I want to ask you know, the Doc and David, and I think we've had this conversation before, and I've posed this question before, but I'll frame it a bit differently in that if the Oakland Teachers Union is not protecting the rights of teachers, nor protecting the education of students, what exactly is their mission and purpose, and how are they bringing value to kids and to teachers? Now, the same is going on in Texas, because ultimately, guys, this is a different world in all the best ways. It's 2022 and not 1942. In 1942, we had to worry about teachers working, you know, elongated hours, teachers not having weekends off, teachers being forced to do several classes without prep periods. Listen, I'm a charter school. All right. Like, our teachers have the choice to join the federation or not. And granted, like, maybe I'm a very ethical leader, but my sister's also an employment lawyer and I'm no idiot. So I'm here on public record to be like, yo, like, we're not violating OSHA laws ever, because like there are like 300 different organizations that can come after me. Like, I could get sued. The Equal Opportunity Employment Commission, any kind of employment lawyer, the state, the federal government. I could literally get nailed from 17 different directions.
Yeah.
Like, I just jumped into like a paintball tournament in the middle of the competition, midfield. It was like, hey, everybody, what's up? I'm going to violate OSHA, and just get sprayed with bullets, because if I don't give my teachers their prep time, violation. I can get absolutely not just written up, but like reported to the state, reported to employment lawyers, reported to the Equal Opportunity Commission. If I violate any kind of hiring law, I've got 22 agencies that can come after me. So I guess what I'm saying is that these agencies exist to truly protect the rights of teachers and ensure that their rights are being serviced, even at a charter school. So, gentlemen, what is the point of having these unions if they're not bringing a value add to the Oakland community, and if they're just struggling to maintain what is essentially an archaic sense of power that they once served in 1942 that seems, I don't know, like anachronistic in 2022? Is it?
Dude, I think, again, labor should have the right to unionize and do what it does. You know, in certain situations I don't like it, in certain situations I do. I think that, you know, one role, as you see what's happening in Florida around book bannings and don't say gay and this, that, and the third, you need an advocate. I think, you know, hey, how are we making sure people are safe, this, that, and the third? You need an advocate. I'm fine with there being a union. I just want them to be sane. I just want there to be a modicum of sanity. And also, I need somebody that's putting young people first. And to be fair to the teachers union, we've explained multiple times what a union's job is on this show. That job is to protect that constituency, which is teachers. But what that means is, in lieu of a parents and students union that is actually officially at the table, we now need parents and students to be activists in radically making sure they are getting what they need. But that union has the upper hand on the narrative and have fooled a lot of people into thinking that, well, what's best for this teacher is what's best for this student. And that's not always the case. That math does not compute. It does not. And in lieu of, there needs to be a strong representative body for students and parents. And right now, there isn't an official body. So the parents listening to this, you have to put your child's achievement and safety at the forefront, regardless of the system. Again, it is not about loving a system. It is about loving and making sure your children get what they need, because you saw those numbers that Shanti spoke about. I'm being conservative when I say less than 40% of kids in Oakland are reading on grade level. I'm being conservative. It's actually much worse than that. So there is a focus and a need in potential ways, Omar, but there's a larger need for there to be a counterweight that's on behalf of students.
So let me interject really quickly and ask a question. And I know David's probably got something to say as well. What is it going to take, doctor, a real doctor, ladies and gentlemen, what is it going to take to, no, and I'm being legitimate here. Like, what is it going to take to reconstitute the unions so that they're actually, I think, I don't want to say reinventing themselves, reorganizing themselves, re-strategizing themselves so their mission and vision and work is current with the needs of 2022, current with the needs of the constituency,
Absolutely.
Current with the needs of the teachers, so that they have a reconfiguration, that's the right word, of their goals and mission that will literally service the community, as opposed to, I'd say, again, like an antiquated ideology. Your thoughts, gentlemen, because I'd love to hear.
It is going to take.
What do we do?
Yeah, I have an answer for this, and then I'll shut up and get out the way, David. My bad. But what it's going to take is there. You know how we always say, it's some good teachers. There's some good teachers, and I know some that really do care. It is going to take these teachers to actually organize. It's going to take the good teachers that actually care about kids to organize, because a lot of people do not vote in the leadership and the slates for teachers unions. So it's going to take teachers that actually care about their kids, that actually care about their communities, Black teachers from our community that grew up in Oakland, like Ty Mack, who is in here, who's one of my best friends. We grew up, went to high school together, and my homie Hub that grew up into Emory High School with me, who's also an educator and I know loves kids. It is going to take them to run and be the leadership of the union to actually put those kids first, while also making sure teachers are getting the things that they deserve. That's what it's going to take. It is the same pressure that we try to put on cops, right? The same way we say, you can't say it's all these good cops and it's just a few bad apples, but the good cops is watching the bad cops stump out the Black people, right? Oakland just had one of its blackest police classes, I think, in history. I know some of these people, right? So I think that's one of the things that is going to take, Omar. I think there's power that our teachers have. I think they have to believe in that power, and I think they have to start bucking and pushing back on this system that does not represent them, because they are making you look bad. They are making you look greedy. They're making it look like you don't really care about COVID. You don't really care about safety. You actually just don't want to work. That's what and I know that's not true for the vast majority of Oakland teachers. I know it's not true. I know it. I know it in my heart, and I'll stand up and I'll fight with them. But your leadership, the larger leadership that has a Black man now at the helm of that stuff, I don't want to speak ill of this man. I try not to do this to other Black people, so I'm gonna stop there. But those people are making the teachers that I know, that give their blood, sweat, and tears to their kids every single day and know their content, are actually and are actually looking at data and making sure their kids can read and do math. It's gonna take for you to stand up. David, I'll step back and let you go, brother, because I'm gonna bust a damn gasket, man.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. I mean, I think even if we're not able to change the structures that exist right now, with how collective bargaining works and the way that the different kinds of units and their larger units function. I think within the core of teachers, there are opportunities for people to step into leadership roles within particular unions. And we're not talking about all of them. We're talking, UTLA is a great example. Chicago Teachers Union, New York, Oakland is obviously a prime example, San Francisco, pretty radical organizations. And if people are okay with that, being a radical political oriented organization that is not focused on the academic and socially emotional needs of children and community, that's fine. And if you're not okay with it, then you should work to disrupt, those systems from within by running for your site leadership and running for, different types of like systems level leadership committees and boards within your particular union, right? That's like the change from within. I think number two is, for all facets of what we're talking about here, it doesn't matter who you are. I mean, if you're not talking about, the needs of children and willing to put a number or a percentage down on paper to hold yourself accountable for, how your actual work will benefit children, then we have a problem. So I think the whole system, this is kind of part of what we were talking about this morning on the Freedom Friday show, was the work that that Sharif is doing, to develop Black teachers that are going to go in and work with Black children in schools, and a fundamentally different orientation around how these teachers are prepared, starting with the needs of the particular child. There's a whole fundamental orientation shift that a lot of these radical teacher unions have to take into consideration. There's definitely a political lens to it, not just in California, but nationally. When we look at not just teacher unions, but unions in general, including police unions, but looking at teacher unions, I think the AFT and NEA, 99.99% of their political donations go to Democrats, right? And so we have an actual larger system issue. If you're going to try and reform, how teachers unions work and the level of transparency that they're responsible to provide to the public, it's, at the end of the day, it is a political issue, and it's not a Republican issue. It's clearly a Democrat issue. So going into these midterms, again, I think Charles brought it up. I wouldn't be surprised to see a bloodbath. Fully expecting it, preparing, growing my garden, battening down the hatches and preparing for whatever comes next. How are the children?
And how have the fucking children been? Sorry, I gotta stop cursing. I'm out of. There are no sponsors on this episode. I'm sorry, y'all.
Dr. Charles Cole, ladies and gentlemen, channeling Mr. Omar Yanar, who usually drops.
I know. I'm gonna just have to pay for this episode out of my pockets, man. I mean, not that we have sponsors. I'm just speaking it into existence. But speaking of which, for the people that are fans of the show, we will be having our traditional audio podcast up very, very soon. You'll be able to find us on Spotify, Apple, and the like, wherever podcasts are. And we will be starting from the first episode of the South Star Classroom from about 4 ago. I cannot go all the way back from Common Grounds. That would just be, I would never leave my office, ladies and gentlemen. But we will continue to give you better products and ask us those questions that you need, and we will make more resources that you all can use. Go ahead, Omar.
No, man. Look, I was just saying that as we reconfigure to the 21st century, and I think I'm finding like a really interesting theme, and follow me for just a second.
Let's go.
We've been giving a ton of tours. Everyone can still hear me. I'm getting a call on
You're
my
fine.
phone and checking out my audio. All right, good. I'll be back on audio. We've been giving all these tours of the school lately, the East Side, and follow me for a second here. As we give these tours and they're seeing this like very different building, and it's remarkably different than what any other school looks like. And then they start hearing our curriculum, and it's radically different than any other organizational model or curriculum that they've ever heard. It's focused and centered and framed under the context of, I want you to think about what you have seen today that is exactly the same model as the 1940s and still working. Think about that just for a second. To our audience, to Dr. Cole and David, maybe there's some things, and I don't know, maybe the can opener, like maybe that's still like, although we got electric can openers today, but like cars, homes, the entirety of the highway system.
Canned goods, maybe.
Computers.
Stock
What's that?
market. I said maybe canned goods, maybe the stock market with its,
Yeah.
if you expect the peaks and valleys. But yeah, it's not very
Indeed.
many.
But and even the stock market has gone under incredible antitrust change since the 1940s and has really reinvented itself. And yet you go into schools and they still look like the 1950s, still modeled after the 1950s model, still the same old 1950s model. And it's this like unbelievable epiphany to be like, I tell parents as they enter our school, like, welcome. As we've redesigned the world, it's time to redesign what education looks like, feels like, and creates for children, from the design of the school to the curriculum. Therefore, we are the last bastion, for whatever reason, that has not gone through an incredible redesign in order to meet the needs of like the 21st century. And people think that you could choose, like, I don't know, like, hey, we're going to do STEM. Hey, we're going to introduce a couple computers. I'm like, it's literally this, like, this ain't a werewolf, man. This ain't Monster Squad. Like, oh man, the werewolf, we got to throw a silver bullet at this thing. I've heard a lot of educators very astutely say that it takes 100 separate things done exceptionally well in order to make these like very critical changes. So in the same respect, ladies and gentlemen, if education has stayed the same, and there's a few of us who are truly and deeply trying to highly evolve education quickly to meet the needs of the 21st century, my question for the unions, my question for the AFT and the NEA is, are you still working under the same anachronistic concepts from the 1940s and 1950s, as does education? Because for some reason, this has been the last bastion of any bureaucratic state to evolve. And why? Because as you say that we need new leadership, I don't think it's just that we need new leadership. We need absolutely new direction. I'm all for the unionization of folks. I'm all for workers' rights. I'm all for the fact that people get together. But the problem that I have is, when you're getting together, what is the purpose of why you're getting together, and what is the value add that you're providing to people's lives? Because someone supporting differentiated pay for qualifications as a union, to me, seems that should not be that evolved. It is evolved for a union. However, like, let's be honest here. I don't know, man. When did Adam Smith invent capitalism and the idea of a market economy? And yet we're still grappling on with, like, I don't want to slander Marxist this way, because I don't want to say these are Marxist thoughts. I don't want to sound like, Tucker Carlson, who hasn't read the Communist Manifesto and probably wouldn't understand it. The man nearly failed journalism school, but undemocratic and highly irregular ideologies of equal pay for teachers, when there's very factual differentiations in their work, it all just seems to me like there is a ludicrous lack of evolution in where the unions have been. And instead of pushing forward and failing forward, or whatever, like hashtag you want to talk about from one of these like white authors that keep telling me I need more grit. Although I think that was an Asian author who championed that one, is I want to know what you've done to add value and evolve to the needs of the 21st century in 2022, instead of screaming at people about your power and your like demands on the world and your political prowess. Because it seems to me that they are becoming, much like you said, gentlemen, in this political process, a part of the problem. As people keep screaming in 2022 about, you know, woke culture, which like, I'll just be very frank about woke culture. Like y'all have gone overboard. Y'all have gone way overboard. All right. Like those of us who are trying to create equity for ourselves through gender and through race have been fighting a struggle and been trying to ensure that we've been equal. And y'all just screaming racism when someone's just trying to get paid a little bit more for being a sped teacher. You are the very problem that is going to create a Republican landslide in this midterm election. Now, I ain't got nothing against Republicans and Democrats, but what's going on right now is like, you ain't part of the solution. You're a big part of the problem. And when you're part of the problem and you refuse to change yourself, you need to be overhauled. So it's not just about evolution, you're about revolution. And those unions need to be revolutionized. Shout out Cinco de Drinko. Shout out Cinco de Mayo. Shout out the Battle of Puebla. David should be laughing for all my friends out there celebrating Cinco de Drinko or Drinko de Mayo. This process needs to be revolutionized. And a revolution does not have to be violent, ladies and gentlemen. It's a different ideological thought. A revolution, by definition, is a change in mental ideology, and the unions need to have a major mental ideological shift.
You better preach, brother. You better preach. And I don't know if you rolled your final thought into there, but I have a date with Marvel in the Multiverse soon, so I want to just make sure we. I
did, in fact, roll out the final thought because
it was good. I'm with you. I agree with you.
That Wanda. I know you're trying to get with that Doctor Strange. I know you're trying to get with the, Spider-Man number 1 through 17 and shit that's going to be in that movie. I don't know what's going to be in that movie.
It's going to be craziness. It's about to be madness. It's in the title. David, what are your final thoughts?
It is in the title, man.
Yes. What is your thoughts?
So big picture and tailing off of Omar's Gettysburg Address there. I would say we talked about this morning on the show on Freedom Friday. We talked about, when somebody says education reform, we think of, charter schools, or we think of giving schools autonomy, or we think of, ed tech or whatever it is, right? Education reform has this thing that comes along with it when the term is thrown out there. But what real education reform is, like, if you've ever been a teacher, if you've ever been a school leader, or if you've ever worked in a school, every day you show up, you are constantly thinking about things that you can do differently to better serve children. That's education reform. You're constantly reforming your routines, reforming your practices, reforming your approach, reforming your lessons. That's education reform. That's should inherently be built in to how we run schools, right? Because all of the external factors are constantly changing. And so if you're working in a school system, you have to change as well. And so the connection here is for several of these radicalized teacher unions, they are failing to reform, or they're reforming down the wrong path. And if they don't change course and take feedback that they're getting from community, I don't know what the future holds in store for them. But I would say the safest bet for anybody, listening to this show, we've talked about particular teacher unions, the work that teachers do, that school leaders do. And even if you're a parent, this every day you wake up and you're like, how can I be a better parent? How can I be a better parent? Because yesterday really was bad. It's rethinking your orientation. And our teachers are not picking tomatoes or strawberries or artichokes, right? That's a different organization. That's a different group of labor. Our teachers teach children, right? And so our unions message to them is shift. If your orientation is not, I understand teachers' working conditions are children's learning conditions, yes, but we also have to be hyper focused on measuring if children are actually learning. And so, and that requires daily reflection, daily, ways of changing your thinking and reform. And so I think for some of these radicalized unions, if they're still listening at this late in the podcast, is reform your ways, or you're going to be left behind, by history.
Man, mine is similar, man. I actually agree with what Omar said about, unions having to change and evolve, but I don't control unions. I ain't got no power over them. And if you're watching this, you probably don't either, unless you are a teacher, and I've already given you advice on that you should step into the game and try to get some power and some leadership. But if you're a parent and somebody ain't got your best, your best, intention, they're just not looking out for you, then make them obsolete. Black folks have the highest, fastest growth of homeschools out of any other demographic, and that was before the pandemic. And during the pandemic, Black kids struggled a lot, and they're still struggling. If anybody's going to strike, it should be you. It should be you picking up your ball and going home. It should be you finding other options, because you only get to play in my face for so long when I actually have the power. Now, you want to see a strike. If all these Black and brown parents decide to strike on 20-day count and hurt pockets in a different type of way and make demands that you hold teachers' feet to the fire, things would change. But you know what? The same way as I'm Black and a Democrat and they ain't doing nothing to make sure I'm okay because they know my vote is coming, they know you sending that baby to school. And if you don't, they got truancy police for you.
Mm-hmm.
That don't sound like choice and love. That's not like a hostile takeover. It sounds like you made us get rid of our Black schools and our brown schools and fired our teachers and hired yours with inadequate training, and then told me if I didn't go, I got to go to jail, when Black people was part of the reason you got free public education. Don't forget where you come from. Don't forget what makes this possible, because we're not talking about this in suburbs. We're not talking about this with prominent, affluent white people. This stuff is happening with poor people, Black people, and brown people at the helm, because they know you love them. Love don't live here no more, though, man. I went to your damn schools. I didn't go to a charter school. I didn't go to a private school. I went to traditional schools, and they did not hold up their end of the bargain. So why you keep getting the free pass, and why you keep granting the free pass? And with that being said, man, I'm very angry today. I'm going to go watch a Marvel movie. That is Omar. That is David. I am Charles. And we will see you all next week. Same bat time, same bat station. Y'all be smooth. Take care of each other. And you good teachers out there, stand in your power, man. Stand in your power, because they getting a residue and that mildew on your clothes, and they making you smell like you didn't take a shower. Y'all have a good one.